Ron Hughes. I was born and raised in Alabama, but lived in Austin, Texas here for the last 29 years.
My name is Eugene Poole. I'm from Miami, Florida. I was born in Georgia, raised in Miami, and presently I work as a lineman for the Florida Power and Light Company.
I was drafted in 1969.
How old were you?
May. At that particular time, I was 21.
And I was drafted as soon as I got out of high school, basically.
What happened that day? You got your draft notice in the mail?
Well, I had just signed up with Southern Bell to work for them, and at the same time I got a notice saying, welcome, you are now drafted in the United States Army.
They just kind of herd all these guys in, and you kind of sit down and you take a bunch of tests and all that. You get sworn in, and like Eugene was saying a while ago, it's pretty scary because you already know where you're going.
Yeah.
I had friends that had already been to Vietnam and come back. Anyway, I think the scariest part was there was about 120 of us in this big room, and we was all sitting down taking tests and all like that, and this Marine gunny walks in, talks to the staff sergeant that was having us do these tests and everything after we'd been sworn in, and the staff sergeant says, we need 6 volunteers for the Marine Corps out of this group, and nobody, of course, raised their hands, and he says, well, you just volunteered, and I thought he pointed at me, and the guy in front of me got up, it's like, I don't want, he says, shut up and sit down, you going, so that was, that
scary right there.
That was scary right there, I'm talking about. These guys didn't want to go to the Marine Corps, they want to go ahead and stay in the Army, but yeah, that's how they did. I'm assuming some of their recruiting when they were, needed people.
Where'd you land when you arrived in Vietnam?
Cu Chi.
Cu Chi.
Yeah, Cu Chi.
Where's that?
That's in the south part of Vietnam. Yeah.
Actually, it was division headquarters.
Division
for the 25th,
headquarters, right.
For the 25th Division. The perimeter on it was 25 miles. We're looking at a 25 miles
radius.
Tane Inn was our immediate rear where we got all our supplies and everything from, which it was a smaller base camp.
So he can remember all those things. Me, I must have blotted things out of my mind so hard I can't even remember a lot of things. Really had to focus on knowing where we were and what we had to do to survive. And all of us had that same mode. Nobody was better than the other person, everybody was one.
When you first get there, like with me, I remember they finally cut my orders for Charlie Company, the 2nd or 12th Charlie Company, and when I got to the base camp, they assigned me what platoon I was on, which I was assigned to 3rd Platoon and all like that, and you take like people like Sergeant Poole, like the day I got there, we went out on a mission the next day. I'm talking about it was cold, just really cold turkey, what I'm talking about. And he stuck me with Sandoval, and I didn't know who, just stick with this guy here. And next thing I know, I'm talking about Sandoval walking point, what I'm talking about. So it was like, I remember we had contact that first day, had a Viet Cong in Woodline started shooting on us, and we were out in company 4s, and the old man, 3rd Platoon to the front, I'm sticking with Sandy, and I'm looking around, and everybody else is behind me, and me and Sandy is out front, because we had got some fire from the wood line, and so it's, I'm talking about, I was really freaking,
You can remember
everything. I not only, huh?
You can remember everything.
I can definitely remember that first day, that's for sure, and we went from a clearing that we LZ'd into just totally dense, jungle. I'm talking about, and on top of that, Sandoval was hollering, "Chew hoy, chew hoy, chew hoy," and it's like, what in the hell what is he hollering this damn goop for, man? What is chew hoy crap? I found out later it means give up. Come over to our side, chew hoy. And some did, I'm talking about, we wound up making Chihuahua scouts out of them, and they'd walk point and stuff for us and help us find booby traps and all this kind of stuff. And Sandoval looked back at me and said, well, apparently he's not going to do it. And he started throwing hand grenades down the damn trail, you know. Like, I was, by this time, you know, even prior to that, we were shooting a wood line, you know, and my 16 right off the bat jammed. It had got sand in it, and that freaked me out before we even got there. And then there was a fork in the trail that went this way here off. And I think Sandoval, you'd have to understand Sandy. He was a really good man, but he was pretty wild. I think he got to thinking I might wind up shooting him, so he put me off to the side. He told me to guard the rear. This trail, don't let nobody sneak up on him, you know. And of course he went on down, and Hillbilly and I don't know who all was there at the time. I didn't know anybody. I'm talking, you know what I'm saying? I really didn't know anybody. And so from there, and I remember I had the water. I went through a gallon and a half of water in about 15 minutes.
That's the NBA. They're a regular army. They would come down from the north, and the Viet Cong would feed them and keep them up for the night because they go on down further into the south to keep the war going on. So they come through different areas, and they got different places that they stop off. So we try to intercept them with ambushes and things like that. So I put him with somebody who was real wild.
Yeah.
Wild, but was a good soldier, though. He was a good soldier.
Yeah, you wouldn't want, if you're going out in the field, you want him with you.
Right, he's a good soldier.
So
I figured Ron was going to pick up right away because of the accent, the country accent. Mostly country guys, they can track pretty good. So right away, I said, okay, I like your accent. So I gave him the name Festus, of course, because of his accent and the cowboy that stuck with. But I figured that he was going to be good. Had to get him good right off the bat. You had to really put him in the situations and put him with people who you know going to take care of him. Like you say, Sandoval was wild and crazy back at the base camp, but when it come to firefighting, I knew what he would do, what he could do. I knew he would take care of him. I don't know if anything is natural to me. I always learn some things I wasn't afraid of. And as far as people saying, no, you looking at John Wayne movies and you gung-ho this and that. It wasn't that, it was fear.
What was your initial impression upon your arrival there?
Fear.
What was
Big.
the first
Anger. Anger first, then fear.
Why anger?
Anger because I didn't want to be in the Army. When you go to basic, they make you angry, real angry. They make you hate the Army. But I took the anger and channeled it towards survival. And the reason I'm saying that fear is because they give us 2 weeks jungle training before they send us out. And they had this one Vietnamese go through this mash of tangled wire with cans and everything. If you shake it, the noise, you can hear them. You know, it had rocks and cans and little GIs fixed up. He went through all this mash of tangled wire without touching anything. And I'm saying to myself, how can we fight an enemy like that? You know, if he's that quiet and it's dark, you can put your hand in front of your face like this at night and you won't be able to see it. So they put me on bunker guard, and I was thinking about that guy who went through all that wire and how dark it was, and I couldn't see nothing. And so I started crying. And then I got mad. Then I got real mad. I said, it's going to be me or them. And I said, I'm going to fight them with everything I got. It really made me mad because I couldn't see nothing. And I remember him going through there. I said, you have to figure out ways to survive. But that night on that bunker guard really channeled my anger to survival mode. So I said, I'm going to kill them before they kill me. And that was, something I thought about that night. But the fear was there first, and then the anger.
Just accept it as reality. How did you feel?
I accepted as reality where I was. I said to myself, you were in a war. And, I didn't want to kill anybody because that wasn't in my nature. And then when you saw the first people who get killed, how their bodies are torn all apart and guys shot and messed up and your friends, then you become really, really focused in. You really want to destroy back. You want to strike back with all you got. You want to kill. And then you become a killing machine, something that you never thought you could do. You do it. Walking up front. He wouldn't put nobody else up front. And I knew him and the ones that I took special attention to would be up front.
we were all out in Company 4, even with the mortar platoon, and 3rd platoon, we had late in the afternoon had finally came up on a bunker complex that we had found, and got intelligence that we know that you know the bunker complex was there. We could tell that they were the trail running from it. As Gene knows, when we go out, the platoon sergeant is always looking, okay, for a good ambush site, because you're not going to come back in the logger site. You're going to riff until just about dark, and then you take and kind of make a little circle and come back into where you want to set the ambush up at that night. When you're doing that through the jungle like that, and you come to anything that's out of the ordinary, which we had came up just, you know, and Buck caught it just immediately.
That was one of the guys.
Some of the low foliage wasn't there, you know, and so we figured there was maybe another bunker complex. Well, it wasn't. It wound up being just some breastwork where they would set up ambush sites at. A couple of crappers where they're at. We destroyed that, and then went on paralleling the trail, leading back, and it did lead to the complex, okay? And we got within about 50, 60 meters of 2nd Platoon where they were at, and the Viet Cong were set up in some outpost bunkers that were away from the main bunker complex where 2nd Platoon was. Later on, thinking about it and all like that, they were trying to get us in a crossfire between us and 2nd Platoon, and so we basically just walked into an ambush. They blew claymores on us. They started mortaring us and all like that, and Sugar Bear, Ralph Winters is his real name. His nickname was Sugar Bear. He was my radio operator. He came up from the rear. Got GRODIE. His name is Bob Well's real name, but everybody had nicknames over there. Most everybody. Sergeant Poole didn't have no nickname.
Yeah, you did give me.
Yeah, but you didn't never know it. They blew the ambush. I had 2 killed and 3 wounded, count myself. That's what happened to me. 3 days later, you know, I wake up in the hospital and they had to take my arm off, and from Nam I went to Fort Sam, Houston, down there for rehab, and then from there I was DOE'd out, you know. Anytime they start dropping mortars in on you, you can't stay where you at. If they got a spotter somewhere, they're gonna walk the mortars in on top of you. So you got to keep moving. It's bad when you got wounded at the time, okay? Because like Richard Beck was on the radio, called a medevac in. We got to an area which had a lot of high bumps and stuff, and it was a very small place for a chopper to come down to try to. He couldn't get down low enough to get us on the chopper, so had to wave that first lift off, and the colonel was in a loach at the time circling, and he said, you know, y'all got to keep moving. Richie was still on the horn to get a penetrator in, and a penetrator is a chopper that's got a basket or even just a loop that go around you that can, you know, they can hover up and pick you up out of the jungle. And that's the way we were evacuated out. We had to move to another site in the process of what was left of the platoon, trying to basically keep the VC off our butts while we were getting evacuated out.
So there'd be some kind of rear guard action keeping them.
Yeah, you take and do that and with a fallback and all like that. And I'll tell you something other, it's pretty daggum hard, because 3rd Platoon, that's the first time we ever run from anybody.
That's the first time they ever had to run. But
That's the first time we ever got bushed too.
Did you see these guys who were attacking you? Did you ever see them?
Initially, when the ambush went off, I seen 2 in a bunker that after the initial blast, of course, Buck was killed instantly. I was hit on the left side, the arm, the stomach, the face, and all that right here, which, like I said, it came from the left. They was bunker complex. With me laying on the side, I still have my weapon, and all like I emptied my weapon on the bunker, and I couldn't do anything else. at that particular time. I didn't never lose consciousness through the whole ordeal.
That's because he's a tough old joker.
In fact, I was still trying to give orders, you know, and to no prevail. I'm talking about I was still aware enough when Sugar Bear came up. I was trying to sit up, and he was trying to keep me from sitting up because my understanding later on we was getting rifle fire too. I couldn't hear that much because it shattered my eardrum. The explosion from the claymore, it shattered my eardrum. I could see stuff going off. Sugar Bear come up and throwed me over the shoulder and started off down the trail, running me down the trail, and of course my arm was, I'm talking about, it wasn't off or anything like that. It was just hanging by the skin, basically, and it was about this big around. And I was hitting, we was running into vines and all that stuff. I told Sugar Bear, I said, just put me down, man, you're killing me. I'll walk out of this damn place, And he did, he followed orders, and I walked out to where we were, where the other guys were wounded at, and basically just sat down, and Doc was working on GRODIE wells back here, and on GRODIE, and he had initially got a few pellets hit him, and with the blast went off, and he set up and was looking around. That's when he had an AK round hit him in the head. He had brain damage, boom here, and of all of everybody, I figured he wouldn't have survived.
Can you tell me a little bit about your entry into the Army?
Oh, sure. I went through the ROTC program at a military school in Georgia, North Georgia College. Was commissioned a second lieutenant. My initial impression of actually joining the platoon would be, I better shut up and listen to how you do things. You pass it down to the next guys, and they pass it down to the next, and hopefully you end up in a unit that all those right things are passed down, which ends up keeping guys alive. In fact, my platoon sergeant already had 5 Purple Hearts when I got there. So it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out I better listen to this guy. We used to say that if you made it through your first firefight, the chance of you surviving your whole tour in country went up, a very large percentage just by making it through that first one, because you learn so much, the first time that you're under fire.
I said, man, this guy is good. I said, I'm going to follow him and see what he know. I want to be just like him. He was so enthusiastic, energetic about getting his job done, at the same time taking care of his men. And that was the kind of, to me, it looked like a natural leadership to me. And I said, well, if I'm going to survive, I have to follow him and watch him and learn what he learns.
But see, at the same time, all these other guys are talking about the influence that he had on them. So see, it just
That's what you're saying.
keeps them going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. See, a lot of people don't know. Americans, once they focus on wanting to fight and win, they definitely can fight. They can definitely fight. Everybody spoke about how rough the Rock soldiers was, some of the Viet Cong and the NBA, but American soldiers can fight. He said it great last night when get a letter with perfume on it. Everybody gets to smell it, man. Everybody gets to smell that perfume.
But see, I hadn't seen this guy in 35 years.
35 years.
And after an hour or so, it was just like last week.
It's hard to imagine.
I never knew I never got his first name. I knew his name was Duncan, and he was an LT, right? And I was like, man, I just want to know his first name, because the influence that he gave me I was appreciative of that. It saved me plus a lot of other guys. And guys like to give me credit to some things, but I give them credit too, because it was all of us. We all had to be there to make that work.
Once you get to the point that you're not afraid, then come tell me, and then we'll worry about that.
Yeah, that's what you're worried to see, because when you're not afraid, you get overconfident, you start getting people killed.
Get careless.
That's the thing that you wanted to grasp when you come over there. What's going on out here? How do I live? How do I survive? First, the veterans will look at you and laugh, and then they start grab you and tell you don't do this, don't do that. But they like the ones who come over with fear and humbleness, so that because they can teach them. But most of the people I've known that come with an arrogant attitude didn't last long. You could have called me gung-ho if that's the case. But it wasn't because of gung-ho. It was because of a healthy fear. I took fear and used it as an ally. Because the fear that I had, I used it to attack the enemy back. To attack them with what I had. I wanted to get them before they got me. You usually get out of the field from anywhere from 9 to 6 months. They take you out the field, you know, because you was out there. They put you in the rear, giving sodas out to the guys who coming out, the boonies and stuff like that. They kept me out there 11 months.
Long time.
11 months. The captain said, well, you're pretty good, Sergeant Poole. I want you to stay out here. I said, sir, it's not about me being good. As you get a little nervous out there after 11 months, you know, you start, like LT said, you start going back to one, you know, it's a fear of like when you first come in there. And I said, look, I'm getting too shaky. I don't want to get anybody hurt. And so he finally pulled me out of the field after 11 months and put me in the rear. And I think it was the next week, our platoon got hit. And that's what happened to FESTUS, and well, Ron, I call him FESTUS. And I would have been in the front, more likely. It would have got me. But when I got ready to go home, I mean, when we came back, they spit on us in the airport and called us baby killers. And so I took my uniform off and, you know, put on civilian clothes because I didn't want that anger to come up out of me because it was there, you know. And then when you get home, your people don't understand a lot of things you go through. A car backfire or something like that, you jump, you know, you duck, and you wake up in your sleep, your whole body full of sweat, you're hollering out. And I couldn't sleep in the bed for 8 years. I had to sleep on the floor, couldn't stand sleeping in the bed. Would stare off into space, and if I did try to talk to somebody, you get choked up and you couldn't finish the conversation. You had to walk away because of the pain, you know. And then you think about all the guys who got hurt and killed over there when they spit on you when you came in the airport. That really hurt you, you know. It was a war. We didn't choose the war. We was there because we was there, you know. We was put there. So years you keep that bottle up in you. You struggle with getting into society. You even may do drugs or whatever it takes to ease the pain, you know. And some of us strong enough not to do them, but the pain was still there. You quick tempo, you react to everything people say, and it's a struggle. It's still a big struggle. And as far as being deacon press, it was like you got to do the best you can. And a lot of it has just started since Ron gathered us together. I was able to sleep pretty good the last few days and never do that at home. I never do. I would sleep 4 to 5 hours, and that's all I could sleep. That's it. Anything that even a mosquito say something, you can hear it, you know. That's how heightened your sense. I can't explain to you how heightened a human being's senses could get with smell, taste, hear, see. All those things are tremendously heightened. And especially if you're really, really a focused person, if you're a trained person to things because you want to live. And it's just like the LT says, something could touch your leg and you know not to move. I did the same thing. It touched my leg and I didn't move because it had like a triangle booby trap. If I had a trap that had wiped out our whole platoon. And it was things like that, you know, you learn those by. It's just like, I don't know how you learn those things. You just naturally instinct afterwards. Had any, I don't know how to pronounce, post-traumatic?
Yeah.
Well, we are definitely the ones who had it. We definitely, and a lot of us just now beginning to decompress. I'm telling you, food never tastes so good to me these last 3 days, or sleep. And I was talking, and I mentioned elephant grass, and it was a firefight that we got in on Saigon River, and he said he keep hearing these reoccurring dreams about elephant grass, but he was in that firefight. It was a bad day. We hit a big nest of Viet Cong, and it was a real battle there. Well, a mix of NVA and Viet Cong. That's the North Vietnamese soldiers and the Viet Cong. So we was really putting on a fight that day, and he couldn't remember what happened. And I brought it all back to his mind, and he would say, well, I thank you for that. I said, for what? He said, I didn't know what elephant grass was about. And with the guys, and they bringing it back to me, and I said, man, that was me. I didn't know that was. I did that. I did. I'm like, okay, if you say so.
Learn from the guys that have the experience already. Pay attention to them. trust your training.
My biggest thing to them, take nothing for granted. Every little minute thing is important. Every minute thing is important. When your mind say, check it out, your mind is telling you right. Your gut instincts, you got to go with your gut instincts also. You got to do that. You got to trust it too. And don't relax. Don't relax at all. Don't get relaxed. One thing I learned about a lot of GIs who got hurt over there, they got relaxed. Never relax inside. Always focus on being aware. Always, everything is important. A leaf out of place or something don't seem right, smells, taste, hear, everything you go with, you go with that. You look at it with a sense of survival. If you don't, you dead. And my thing to them, don't get relaxed.
I'm Richard Beck from northern Idaho, a place called Bonners Ferry, small town 30 miles from the Canadian border. I was drafted in February in 1970. When I got home from my honeymoon, I had a draft notice waiting for me, and not long after that, I found myself in Vietnam. First night I was in Vietnam, where we got into barracks. Everybody was put into barracks, big barracks, like World War II barracks, and that night we got rocketed. Blew up the kitchen right next to us, so it was quite an experience my first day in Vietnam. Tried to stop resupplies coming in mostly, both rice, but mostly, I believe, mostly ammo and weapons coming in through larger trails and that. My job mostly was to call in resupplies or medevacs or just bring in artillery if we ran into anything. The elements probably in Vietnam was as bad as anything else as far as, the enemy was concerned, especially at first, because at first we never hit a lot of the first 5 months in country. We only were in a few small firefights. And until we moved or went into Cambodia, which was absolutely hell. The living, monsoon season came upon us, and when we were in Platoon, which is on the border of Cambodia, it was just a muddy mess. It was horrible conditions to live in, and you slept in mud. And like I had my helmet, I would sit on my helmet, lean against my radio, and that's how I slept. We had already been through that day. We had found a bunker complex, and we already had been through it. 2nd Platoon was supposed to be going there to help demo it and blow that up. We came back through. We were coming back through after going through the trail. We were in some elephant grass for a while, and then we came back through, and we changed. Austin said he wanted to stay as point man. Killed a big Gila monster because he hated them, and it was in the trail. And we were trying to decide then at the time. We all stopped, and the sergeants were discussing whether we should go down the trail, which we didn't like to ever do, or whether we should cut our way through the triple canopy bamboo. Well, we decided that it was too thick, and we followed the trail back since we were already through that trail in the morning. And so we started on back through, and it wasn't too long after we started from the opening going onto the trail, getting into the thick stuff, that we got ambushed. When we got hit, of course, the first few guys, Austin got killed, and Bob was second in line, and he got hurt real bad. He got hit with a claymore with some of the BBs, and then he got up on his knees, sort of, kind of in a state of shock, and then he got hit in the head with a bullet. He was my best friend. And then FESTUS got his arm blown off, and then Hillbilly got hit in the ear. And then we tried to get the bodies out. That's when Stymel came up front to help out, because Burt Woods couldn't get his Austin's belt, or his pants was stuck on some bamboo, and we couldn't get him out. And they were right, I don't know, within probably 10 feet of us when they were firing, and that thick triple canopy. And so he tried to pull them out, couldn't, and that's when Stymel came up to help, but he got up on one knee, and that's when he got shot. And I had the colonel up, was in the helicopter, and he was trying to talk to me. I had base camp trying to talk to me, and I was also trying to call in with the medevacs and trying to get them in, but it was so thick we couldn't get the medevacs in. We finally got everybody out. We had to leave some weapons and stuff behind, which they weren't happy about, but we had to, and we took off drug bodies and gear and everything that we could back. And that's when the colonel came on even stronger, wanting me to pop more smoke, and them at the LZ too wanted me to keep popping smoke where we were, and then to identify where we were, and then I had to run back to the trail and throw another smoke back on there. A spotter plane wanted to know again where exactly we were, and to make sure that when they brought napalm in that that we weren't going to be hit. So I ran back, threw a smoke down the trail about where we were, and the medevac was coming in, and we couldn't get them out because it was too thick an area. So we had to move everybody and all the gear back even further and try to find a better place for them to load everybody up. We were all sitting in the camp in that ambush in a great big huge 1,000-pound crater, and we had outposts. We had 2 outposts that was away from it, towards the wood line. You always do that in case, so they can see things before we can see them. Hillbilly was in that outpost. Well, and with our night scopes, we spotted NVA. I don't know how many, probably 20, 30 NVA, fully dressed NVA, fully geared, walking the wood line. I guess the captain had told Hillbilly to let them go by, let them walk right by him, so that they were away from them, and so we did. I guess I don't know how many feet they came from, but I'd say within 10 feet of their hole that they had dug, and they walked on by, and as soon as they got by, the whole company opened up on them. It didn't last long. We opened up maybe for 3 to 5 minutes, and then we shot illumination up, and then we sent a platoon in out to find if we can get the dead or any captured. We captured 3 that night. Well, you can imagine the Army trains you to kill. I mean, you sing songs, you're up early in the morning, you're late at night. Your idea, your training was to kill. But coming back out of the Army, I wasn't at all prepared for. I mean, you can imagine that you're in a total different environment, and it's only survival. You forget what it's like back in the real world, and then all of a sudden you're put back into the real world, and it was hard. It hasn't been. It's been a long time for me, at least. I know some guys did pretty well when they got out. I struggle. I don't sleep 3-4 hours a night, maybe, if I'm lucky. You try to block things out, which all of us have for 20 years, most of us, like myself. I never talked to my kids, nobody, my wife, anybody about Vietnam for 20 years until I was interviewed by a writer, a friend that I knew that wanted to interview me, and I finally opened up then. That was the first time I'd ever opened up to anybody. I know, people didn't want to go because of one reason. They have, and I don't look down upon those people. I have friends that skipped out on it, did everything to get out of going to Vietnam. I didn't. It's not that I wanted to go, but I felt it was my duty to go because of my country.
Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
Yeah, Ralph Winters. I live in Hagerstown, Maryland. I was drafted, so they put me in the infantry. So.
Where'd you arrive?
We arrived. I was assigned to 25th Infantry, which our base was Cu Chi, South Vietnam, and that's where the main headquarters is at. And then I was assigned to 2nd of the 12th Charlie Company, and then later on the 3rd Platoon. The way the dice rolled, if it was my turn to go, I was going. I think we helped them out from a financial standpoint, and I believe a lot of South Vietnamese really wanted us to free their country. But I think politics got into it. And with a combat soldier, the worst thing you can do is enter politics into his job. If you want him to do the job, send him over, do it, and let's get done with it and let's get out. And I don't think that was ever the actual idea that was set forth by our peers, the people that ran the government. So it was a profitable war for a lot of companies.
You think it started like that?
No, I think when the special forces were there to train the South Vietnamese, I think it was in America's interest to help them. It wasn't nothing financial like gold mines or oil or anything else. They had hardly next to nothing financially to benefit us. We went in there in good spirits and with a good heart, but as politics get into things and things drug out, it got to be such a big machinery operation that it was too difficult to stop. My unit mainly rifted RIF, rifted in the day, reconnaissance and force. Out on recons with a whole platoon, like 30 men, right? And then we'd find activity on a trail as we crossed it. We'd circle around, and when it became dark, we'd move back in at darkness and set up on the trail in ambush, waiting for someone transporting supplies to the VC or the North Vietnamese Army and movement, troop movement, and we'd blow the ambush. That was mainly one of our main jobs. The South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, I believe their spirit was there. I was able to attack it with 2 or 3, 4 men. Not with the ammunition, the amounts of ammunition, rifle, bullets for rifles, machine guns. They may have some, but not quite a lot. But they'd attack it with everything they had. And usually they lost, right? In my experiences, most all the time they lost. But their heart was in it, their soul was in it, and I guess were willing to die for it. Now the North Vietnamese regular army were trained, uniformed, backed by supply like we were, and they were much more of a formidable enemy because when they stood and fought, they didn't back up. They had the machine guns, the ammunition to back it up. I was in Vietnam when our president sent us into Cambodia, and that was the most combat out of all the time I was in Vietnam in like a 1 or 2 month period that we experienced. We come in some heavy firepower. We had all kinds of air support, which they didn't, and we still experienced a lot of casualties, a lot of deaths. It bothered me personally, it upset me that I felt my country wasn't behind me. But as it was pointed out to me by some officers, that's not our entire country. These are a few people, you know, are upset with what's going on in Vietnam. Well, I'm in the jungle, I'm not happy with it either, right? But we were there during the job.
So you have a nickname?
Yeah, Sugar Bear.
Sugar Bear?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you get the nickname from?
We had a machine gunner nicknamed Sandy. Sandy was a little crazy, very hyper, got upset real quick. And we actually had a hot meal one day. We were in a rear secured area. We were helicoptered back. And I went through the mess tent line, and I didn't want any of the food. I was used to eating out of cans, and nothing looked good. So at the end of the line, there was little boxes of cereal, Sugar Crisp cereal. One box, so I picked it up, set it on my tray. I didn't want any milk. I just going to eat the cereal. So Sandy decided he wanted it. So he snatched it off the tray and took off. I said, okay. So I went back and got cornflakes or something else. The only box of Sugar Crisp that was left. So that night, he got drunk or something and started bragging. He stole my cereal, blah, blah, blah. We got in a fight. I threw him off a bunker, and he never bothered me no more. So the guys in my unit found the box that Sandy threw it in the trash, cut out the front label and stuck it in my helmet. So he started calling me Sugar Bear. And he said he'll fight for his cereal, which I didn't really, it was the attitude the guy took it from me, I didn't care. But he's gonna brag about it and put me down for it in front of everybody else that I wouldn't do anything about it. That's when it started. So that's how I got to handle Sugar Bear.
That's Sandoval?
Sandoval, yeah, Sandy, yeah. Yeah. Best machine gunner I've ever seen though. Go in the jungle, he'd be the man if I had to pick one person as a machine gunner to take. He was that good. But in the rear area, he wasn't that well liked by a lot of people.
What was why was he a great machine gunner?
Well, because like when you receive enemy fire, if they're shooting at you, it takes a lot of nerve. When you open up with a machine gun, an M60 at 800 or 900 rounds a minute, the enemy can hear this. They train in on that machine gun. I shoot 5 or 6 rounds a minute, 10 rounds a minute, 20 rounds a minute. He's shooting 800, 900. So he can keep your head down as the enemy and take you out. So the most threatening piece of weapon that's shot at you, you're going to try to take it out first, and that's what they would do. He would raise up with tracers going past his head and fire the machine gun right back at him and wouldn't duck down. That's what this reunion is all about. Finding out how other people have dealt with it. We learn a lot from each other. 33 years, we forget different segments and weeks in our tour of Vietnam. You either blank them out or just forget them for whatever reason. So this weekend we fill in a lot of blanks. We get to talk to some people that know what we're talking about when we use the different terms we do use. You know, sometimes we don't have to say anything, just look at each other and we know what we're thinking, and it's good. It's a very healing, mending thing that Ron and Mona set up here for us. I'll probably let you go. I'm gonna run the battery down. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Leonard,
Like I say,
I
I'll talk
appreciate it.
to you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your service.
Okay, thank you. I hope it, may help somebody.
I hope so too.
Well, I'm gonna go back and drink a beer now.
All right, thank you.
Hazel Johnson, Crockett, Texas.
And why are you here today, Mrs. Johnson?
Well, to meet the guys that was with my son when he got killed in Vietnam 34 years ago.
And where did you, when did you first learn of your son's death?
Well, he got killed on the 18th of February, and on the 20th, I was answering the phones. We had chicken dinners every Friday for our church, and I answered the phone to take orders, and I answered the phone, and my son's mother-in-law said, "Are you by yourself?" And I said, "No, all the ladies are here." And she said, "Well, I've got bad news." Said Dwayne was killed the 18th. Well, I just threw the telephone up in the air, and my daughter, oldest daughter, was there, and she carried us. Well, her and her husband carried me home. And then the guys from the Army base came over, and they told me again that Dwayne had been killed. Well, it was 5 days before we got his body back to Houston.
Well, they don't. They're digging a big hole. It's a hole. They're down in the ground, and they just pile things on the top of it. What they do, but their bunkers may be about 10 and 20 feet away, different around where they do things.
But they do
and
it
they
at
make it like a
360.
little, yeah, like a little,
360?
yeah, like all around where they're making it. You got a trail. They're gonna have over there. They're gonna be over here, back here, and just going around. But they're gonna stop one end, when it comes.
When we invaded there, because what they could do, they come down from the north, and the regular army, North Vietnamese army, would come down. They had little R&R centers and training camps. They come across the border and work with the VC, which was the locals there, okay? And when we finally got around to being able to invade Cambodia, the okay on it and all like that, they didn't know we were there. We didn't supposed to be there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, man, we was in contact every day.
Cambodia, it was worse than Vietnam. We had a lot of fighting in Cambodia,
Yeah.
and we had bad fighting over there. Then you walk into a tree and look, and you got a line. Go in between back and look over here, you got a grenade or something right in the side of the tree. Well, they don't want to hit you down the bottom, they're going to hit right in the middle and your shoulder all the way through.
Yeah.
And they got to sit up there, or then they got little pins. You walk in the back and you step on it, you got a little pin be coming out of the back, and you hit that, and the whole your leg is shot, is gone,
Our job that day was not even to go over there and help Second Platoon blow the bunkers. That was their job. We were checking this that supply trail out and see if it ran into the bunker complex. Okay.
Which it did.
Which
Yeah,
it
well,
did.
you're right, dude.
Called the old man and told him that. And I'm talking about house box. After he got talking about it, I can remember him arguing with this new captain. He said, "No, I want y'all to go link up with Second Platoon." And look, we didn't even come in last night. Everybody's tired. We want to come in. they can handle bunkers, because they were still waiting on, there was a chopper to come in and hit a tree, trying to bring rail charges in to blow these bunkers, and they just sitting around over there. But no, y'all go link up with them. So that was one of the things where, you know, that wasn't on the agenda when we left that night. Just one of them things that just, you know,
Plans
presented
change.
itself, and he said, no, y'all go help them blow the bunkers, you know. It seemed like, yeah, that's all we do is help Second Platoon out of their crap.
Oh, yeah,
And they
right.
didn't show the hell didn't help us that day. Even off Matt, you'd run into spots where you just have clearings, you know. And actually, the first clearing we got pulled back to when all this was going on, Beck had got a chopper in to pick us up, okay? Actually, he had two trying to come in, but they were big mounds out there. I don't know what the mounds were, what that was all about. Between it and the mortar fire and all like that, they wouldn't pick us up.
Yeah, that was fun that night. I'll tell you that, trying to find them there.
I think I was scared a lot over there, but I think that night is I really knew that we were gonna get caught in the ambush that night, because you don't move at night. You just don't do that.
That's what the Gook did.
They own the night.
The Gook did.
That's
They
right,
moved
they
that
own
night.
the night.
No, yep. And they know the place. We don't. You know, that's what the thing is, Beck. But yeah, we had to go get them. That's all, man.
How far did you have to go?
Oh, I don't know how much we had to go
I
get
don't
them.
know. It seemed like
Me is miles to me back. I mean, you went a long way trying to find them.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. And stuff back. You hear the radio going, you know, where they at back. We got that guys over here, this much, you know, here, and all right, we're gonna find them, you know.
It had been at least a mile.
Oh
or
yeah,
longer.
but I mean, see, you think it's a long way,
Yeah,
but you
but
think at
in
night.
the jungle, that's like
You go
10
slow.
miles
I mean,
walking
you
home.
going slow, nice and slow at night, you know.